Hello YouTube! If you've paid attention, you know that the next video to be released on the channel was supposed to be the 100k special. But on YouTube, sometimes things happen and these things ask for a response. Just yesterday, Alec and Kiri, another fitness YouTuber, made a video dissing anime fans and aesthetic. So naturally, I had to make a response video because these are the two things that I'm passionate about. Now, usually, if the argument that the person actually provides is poor, I don't make a response because there's nothing to respond to. In this case, however, what's so interesting is that even though I believe the argument to be poor, it is still complex enough that it gives me a ton of space to actually build and structure a response that I believe is going to be beneficial for you. So my video is going to be much longer than the 10 minutes that he spent shitting on bodybuilding and anime. It's also a chance for me to actually take a break from editing the 100k special, which is very intensive. So in a sense, I am going to take that chance to also take a little break and give you something that you want, which is going to be a rant/philosophy discussion around topics that this channel is about, anime and bodybuilding. So if you have not seen Alex's video, you can go and check it out on his own channel. I'm not going to be including bits in my own video, which is going to be long enough. I'm just going to be quoting his points. The gist and the heart of Alex's video is the fact that he remarked that a lot of aesthetic bros also happen to be into anime. And oftentimes, these people look at their favorite character and they use that favorite character as a goal to shoot for. It becomes their goal physique. But instead of trying to replicate the feats of strength of the character, they just stop at that. They just say, oh, I'm fine with the physique and nothing else matters to me. And according to Alec, this is ironic because why would you only take 50% of the character that you like? The body, the surface, the envelope is only half. Why not try to copy the other half, which is the function, what the character is capable of? Why not try to get both? And naturally, if you watch anime, the answer should be obvious. You should be screaming at your screen right now that it's entirely logical. It's because we cannot perform like anime characters because they are fictional characters who have superpowers. We are normal humans, so claiming that we're stupid because we only try to copy the physique is stupid in and of itself. And an example that Alec uses, which shows that he actually has watched some anime in the past, is the example of Gohan from DBZ. Why do people want to look like Gohan instead of being as strong as him? Well, the answer is simple. It's because it's not fucking possible. I cannot fly, I cannot teleport, and I cannot shoot Kamehameha. Trust me, I've tried. The amount of time I've went like this when I was a kid and nothing fucking happened, too many to count. So at some point you give up and you say, okay, well, I'll try to get and replicate what I can, which is the way the person looks. This, I think, is going to be logical for 100% of people. While you can look like Gohan, you cannot be like Gohan, so you take what you can get. However, it would be very disingenuous on my part to pretend that this is the entirety of Alex's point, because it's not. His point is actually much more complex than that. In a sense, it's a philosophical question. What he questions is this: why do people who are presented with both function, fictional function, but still function, and aesthetics, all in on the aesthetics, even though they could still try to replicate some of the function in a realistic setting without trying to fly or shoot lasers? How is it that so many aesthetic bros, when they look at anime, only see the aesthetic and they don't see the function? Because yes, the function is there, and yet they seem to ignore it altogether. They seem to ignore the fact that in anime, the characters are jacked, but they're also strong. So why not try being strong instead? And he has a point, actually. He has a very strong point here, because if you look at DBZ, for example, Goku and Vegeta, they never compare muscles, right? You'll never have a scene where the two flex their chest to see who has a bigger chest, and then that person now wins. It never happens. All they do is they beat the shit out of each other. And at no point is their build even relevant to the story or the context. In most cases, it's not even mentioned, right? You have a few exceptions like Broly, for example, where the characters do remark that, oh, Broly is much bigger than us. But what strikes them in Broly is more importantly his ki, his energy levels, and his strength. His muscles are really secondary to the entire thing, which is interesting because the character is like a mountain of muscles. In other shows like Ippo, if you watch Hajime no Ippo, Ippo does sit-ups, but he never does sit-ups to get abs. He does sit-ups because, well, he wants to have a stronger core to be able to tank body shots. Even in Baki, which is arguably a show about muscles, where everyone is super fucking muscular, something like the demon back, for example, is functional first and foremost. Yes, it has an aesthetic component because it looks tremendous and formidable, but the reason why characters fear Yujiro and Baki in retrospect because of their demon back is due to the function of the back because they become extremely strong when they activate it. Someone like Biscuit Oliva, who is the biggest and most muscular man on earth, is also, in a sense, formidable because of the function of his muscles. It makes him extremely, extremely strong. So even though the aesthetic component is there and it's undeniable, it's true that the plot points and the entire narration of the stories always rely on performance. And that also points to the reason why the characters in the first place chase that performance. It's because in their case, in the context of their universe, it is an actual obligation. They don't have a choice. This is what they must do if they want to survive. And that is the thing that Alec doesn't seem to understand, because even though I say he has a point, he doesn't apply it properly. The only thing that he proves when he discusses that is that, yes, the narrative arc of anime and the ability of the story to go forward and move forward relies on performance. But just because that is the case does not mean that the person who consumes the content is now forced to work in the same fashion. At some point, he says that anime fans miss the forest for the tree because looking good isn't what anime is about. Becoming physically superior is. And he is correct, but we all perfectly understand that. Every single anime fan knows that. Just like I've explained, no one thinks that Goku wins because he has better abs than Vegeta or the other Saiyans. He wins because he's the strongest. The only thing is that we don't need to do that. We don't need to be physically superior because we don't live in their universe. So when we look at them, what we copy is what is relevant to us, which is the physique. I think you would agree with me. I don't know about you, but personally, I don't have aliens landing in my backyard every other day to try and kill my family. I just fucking don't. What I have in my backyard is deer. I don't need superpowers to deal with deer. I just need to throw apples at them or just make a noise and they run away. So I'm going to copy what is going to be relevant in my life, which is muscles. You hear that my voice is going, and that is fucking sad. Because usually I can speak for hours without any problems, and 2 weeks without making videos, and my voice is gone within 8 fucking minutes. It's pathetic. I need to progressively overload my vocal cords. And yes, it is for function and not aesthetics. But let's get back to the discussion at hand. So, this explains why, when people look at Goku, most of them, even though they understand that the character is not about aesthetics, will try to emulate his aesthetics because it's the only thing that is relevant to them. And you know, this puzzles me a bit. This argument of Alec puzzles me because the number one thing that you hear from people who don't like anime, directed at anime fans, is that we are somehow delusional because our goals are not realistic. We look at fictional characters and, oh, it's so cringe, they don't even exist. Why do you do that? This is a different discussion altogether. It's not the point of the video. But what Alex says here is even more, in a sense, abrasive and stupid because he tells us instead that we're dummies, not because we have unrealistic goals, but instead because we are not trying to be as powerful and capable as the characters we try to emulate. So what I'm supposed to try and be a hero like Goku to save the Earth. Alex says at some point in the video also that it's weird to want to have the aesthetics of a superhero, but not the capabilities. But again, the capabilities don't exist and the world doesn't need saving. So why would I try to do that? Why would I try to get these abilities when they have no actually applicable functions in real life? Why can't I just chase the aesthetics since I really cannot chase anything else? If you're watching me right now, Alec, and anyone who trains for function too, and you're under the delusion that you training for function makes you a superhero, I think that between you and I, the delusional ones is not me. It's not anime fans. It's whoever believe that pushing a heavy barbell somehow makes you Captain America. If you wanted to actually have that ability, you should have went and volunteered as a firefighter, or better, learn how to fucking fight. Because also, plot twist, this is going to ruffle some feathers, being able to lift heavy doesn't make you a better fighter. So if you look at anime and you think, oh, I'll replicate the function, I'll be as badass as them, wrong. I mean, that also doesn't make much sense to me, so I didn't understand that point. But the reason why I wanted to bring it up, even though there's not much to work with, is because it also underlines another mistake in Alex's reasoning, and that is that he doesn't seem to understand the goal of anime and the underlining symbolism of anime in reality, which is not surprising. He doesn't watch anime. He actually admitted that. He said it was something that he watched when he was a youngster or a kid, which is also like a covered way to say that anime is for children. We're not going to go into that discussion, this is for later. But if he had actually watched more anime, he would know that the goal of shonen anime, which is what he was discussing, isn't to become physically superior. It also isn't to become jacked. It's simply to become better. That's it. It's the gist of every shonen, to become better. The means don't matter. What matters is how do you improve. So he was correct in saying that just becoming more jacked is not the goal of anime characters, but just becoming stronger also isn't. Both of these are a mean to an end, and that end is always self-improvement. That is the message that times and times again comes back in these stories. And if you actually do the effort of looking at the story in that fashion, you also open up a door to understand all of the great lessons that anime can teach you. If you look at Dragon Ball Z and you only see humans and Saiyans fighting against aliens and trying to become stronger just to kill them, you're getting like what, 5% of the story? What about the rest? What about the relationship between Goku and his sons, the fact that he's trying to become a better father? What about the story arc of Vegeta, who is trying to actually push his pride down to become a better person? All of these things matter. All of these things are much more important and interesting because they're part of self-improvement. Strength is a tiny part of it, and physique is also a tiny part of it. But naturally, people are going to gravitate towards the things that make them want to improve themselves. And so, we are naturally also, as people who consume the media, going to try and replicate the things that touched us in our very lives, because just like within the story of these characters, where every single time the plot and the story is just an excuse to force the characters to surpass their limits and improve themselves, we in our daily lives will also find a vector like aesthetics, which will only really be an excuse to improve ourselves and to push our limits. So just like with anime, where strength pursuit or aesthetic are really just facets of self-improvement, they are interchangeable and they really complement each other, the same is true for us. Many young men, when they think becoming better, think becoming more muscular. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is just the way things are. And as long as it fulfills the purpose of improving themselves, then it's perfectly fine. But of course, someone like Alec wouldn't agree with that because he has a deeply rooted disgust for aesthetics, and sadly, it colors the entirety of his argument. And this is really the reason why I wanted to make this video. It's because if you look at his segment, you will quickly realize that the entire thing was an excuse. It wasn't really about anime. His end goal was to shit on bodybuilding and shit on aesthetics, and anime was just a way for him to get to that end goal, which explains why his understanding of the narrative structure of anime is so poor, is because he cherry-picked. He took what he wanted so as to be able to make his point, but that also sadly makes his point null and unlogical. This is a good example of how not to think. But to keep going on this very notion, you have to keep in mind one thing, and it's something that people in fitness struggle with. A lesson that I personally learned when I was 3 or 4 years old. Just because you don't like something does not mean that it's bad, right? Learn that and then learn it again, because for some reason people keep fucking forgetting. Just because someone like Alec says that aesthetics are bad and you should train for function doesn't mean that it's true. It just means that it is his personal take, and unless he can actually back it up with arguments, logical arguments, it has absolutely no value. I've demonstrated that the first line of arguments doesn't hold any salt, and I'm going to continue because this is only 50% of the video. But I want to make this very clear because I have many people who watch me who are anime fans, who get motivation from anime physiques, and I'm here to tell you that it's perfectly fine and you should never let anyone take that motivation away from you. These people who claim to be into self-improvement but who shit on other people's reason to self-improve are doing the exact opposite of what they set out to do. Millions of anime fans have gotten into training because they resonate with the physique of their favorite characters. Something that started as an obsession for aesthetics managed to transform into tangible benefits for the life of these people. And that is great because blindly consuming media and passively consuming media is what is going to lead to a mediocre life. But if you can find media that is going to motivate you to become a better person, that, in my opinion, is media worth consuming. So even if some people tell you that aesthetics are subpar and that it's a bad motivation, I say fuck them, there's no such thing as a bad motivation as long as it fulfills its role. When it comes to the game of life, there is no such thing as a right reason. As long as the reason leads to betterment, it is the right reason. And by the way, this is what male power fantasies have always done. This is the desired effect. You create a story with a male character in order for the males that consume the story to be inspired and want to become exactly like that. This is also why, if you look at Greek mythology never had this weird focus and obsession on function. They didn't give a fuck. They took whatever they could to make it so that the next generation of males would be better than the previous one. So this meant what? It meant that just like with anime, it was a mix. It was a mix of physiques because these characters, these Greek heroes, were always jacked, described as jacks. Look at the statues, they all have six packs, big shoulders, good chest. Why? Because it's an expression of masculinity, it's an expression of power. And after that, of course, they did crazy stuff. Look at Hercules, look at all of the feats he accomplished. Of course, this is also part of the character. You cannot separate the two. But I would argue that people look up to Hercules just as much for his physique than they do for what he has accomplished. And that is, by the way, also the essence of the hero's journey, which is a story of self-improvement, because every single shonen anime and manga is in reality the hero's journey in a modern form. It's a journey of self-improvement. However you get into that self-improvement doesn't fucking matter. What matters is the end goal. So what the hero looks like and does is how that very progress expresses itself, meaning that to take away from the process by removing the aesthetic part would at the end of the day be counterproductive, because what you damage is the ability to improve. People who don't get that blow my mind, because at the end of the day it looks to me like their own personal desires and their own personal hatred for aesthetic is going to trump their ability to be good motivators and good teachers for people. And that to me is absolutely unforgivable. And this also leads to an interesting discussion regarding anime, because as I just described, anime is modern mythology. It's a mean to push young men to self-improve. And yet many people, many men in the fitness sphere seem to have a deeply rooted hatred for anime. Why is that? Well, I have two explanations. The first one is because of the origin of anime. Since anime is Japanese, a lot of these men, who tend to be Americans and Canadians, have this weirdly placed sense of chauvinism where, because it comes from a different country and a different culture, it must be bad, right? It must be subpar, it must be inferior, and therefore it should not be consumed and embraced by a Western audience. Far from me the idea of calling these people racists. I don't think that's the case at all. I do think that there is, again, an underlying chauvinistic attempt at preserving American media, because I guess these people would never say the same thing about American comics, even though American comics are the exact same thing. It's a modern form of mythology. But if it comes from Japan, it must be bad. And this is when you have people who call it Japanese cartoons. Again, a very childish attempt at making it look like it is for kids because it's cartoons. These people seem to not know the history of animation. They're still stuck in the Disney days where it was cartoons, so it must be for kids because it's a mouse and it's frozen. But animation is a medium. It is an art form. You can make with it whatever you want. So you can make cartoons for kids, you can make cartoons for adults. I mean, it is the equivalent of saying that because someone one day used a camera to record a movie that was for children, then every single movie made after that point must be for children, and the entire genre is for children. Completely idiotic. Not actually surprising coming from people who have never consumed the media. It is insane that you have grown-ass men who have never watched anime in their life who can sit there and tell you, oh, it's stupid. Really. Tens of hundreds of thousands of anime productions made by people, sweat, tears, and blood is stupid. You can just dismiss the entire thing like this. I think that the person who says that is stupid because this is someone who is close-minded and intolerant on the basis of a different origin. These very same people will never say the same thing about Greek mythology, even though they are just as connected to Greek mythology as they are to Japanese cartoons, because you have nothing in common with the Greek heroes of the past. Nothing. If you're American, nothing. So why does one work and one doesn't? Well, I think it's because one is also more ancient, and that is the second explanation. Japanese anime doesn't have the same, in a sense, seniority, so it's not seen as serious. I could ramble about that for hours, but in reality, it is simply sad for the people who say things like this, because they miss on all of the things that they could learn from anime. Because yes, they could learn something. You watching me right now who think, oh, it's for kids. I guarantee you that if I spoke to you for 5 minutes, I could find you an anime that would fit your needs, fit your taste, and also change your life forever. But that loops back to the role of male power fantasies, because since anime is modern male power fantasy, they, as I said, fulfill the role of pushing your man towards self-improvement. And I say that because at some point, and this is why I actually wanted to make a response because it gets interesting, Alec actually goes on to discuss the nature of male power fantasies. And in his opinion, the reason why people find these heroes and these anime characters so cool isn't because they're jacked, but because of their performance. Now, once again, this goes directly against the very concept of male power fantasies, and it's just the direct result of someone who hates aesthetics so much that he's completely incapable of seeing the importance of aesthetics in the trope he discusses. But this essentially means that, according to him, no one would care about these characters if they looked jacked, if they were built, but couldn't do shit. And you know what? Actually, he's right. That is true. I cannot dismiss that point. It is true that if a character was just sort of there and they looked pretty, no one would give a fuck. But I hope you understand why this argument doesn't work. It's because it's presenting something that never actually occurs. You always judge a character first and foremost by what they do within the plot, because that's the function of a character within a plot. It's the nature of the narrative arc. So if you make an argument that a character wouldn't actually be liked if they did nothing, then yes, you're right, because then they wouldn't be a character. But when it comes to actually looking at characters who are jacked in stories of Greek mythology or anime, you will find that this never happens, because what role would they serve within the story if they just sat there and did absolutely nothing? Actually, what that shows is really the exact opposite. In any given story, you are much more likely to remember a character and like them if they do something impactful while at the same time looking impactful. Again, we see that form and function actually complete each other within the male power fantasy trope, and that one without the other won't really work because one without the other isn't even really possible. And if we are to go back into the example that he used of Dragon Ball Z, we see the exact same thing here. Question, do you really think that young men would have gotten into DBZ if the science and if all of the characters weren't jacked as fuck? If they were all 100 pounds or like skinny with the same strength? No, because looking at a guy like Broly with massive fucking biceps who's punching people through mountains is much more impactful and interesting for the male psyche, because unlike what Alec seems to believe, the way you look is just as important as the way you act, because when people perceive the way you act, they look first and foremost at your physical form. There's no like pure essence of nobody who just does an action that doesn't work like that. We are humans, and the media we consume is also about humans, actually physical creatures, who are perceived through their physical form. So naturally, to make the physical form formidable also ensures that people will remember the character that then can go on to do formidable things because he will be remembered. And the proof I have of that is, again, within Dragon Ball Z, Super Saiyan. What is exactly the Super Saiyan transformation? Is it just Goku becoming stronger and nothing else happens? No, there's an entire aesthetic theatrical performance going on behind it. He changes color, the size of his aura, the nature of his aura changes. What is that if not purely aesthetic? And even more interesting, he also gets bigger. I don't know if you noticed, but every single Super Saiyan transformation has Goku double in size. Every single time he steps up in terms of power, it is visually represented by his body becoming bigger. And that is true up until like Super Saiyan 4, where he's like half monkey, half Super Saiyan. And then after that, it's all the bullshit about Dragon Ball Super, where he gets blue hair and red hair. And actually, interestingly enough, that's also the part of Dragon Ball that is complete fucking garbage. Because the aesthetic component of the power evolution of Goku is removed, and so the entire structure of the male power fantasy is destroyed, because now you don't know who's strong, you don't know why people are getting strong, there's not even a reason behind it. It makes no sense whatsoever. This is what happens when you remove the aesthetic component from the performance component. The two need to function together. But even though I just proved that most of his points don't make much sense, at least in the context of anime, it doesn't mean that it's the same in real life. His arguments could still make sense in real life, and at the end of the day, what matters most, anime or real life? If you answer the anime, it's time to go outside and touch grass. So the question still remains, why do anime fans, by and large, gravitate towards aesthetics instead of function? Even though aesthetics is very important in the world of fiction, it might very well be that it's not as important in the real world. And that would actually be an interesting point to make, which he made, but he never proved. He just made the point and just ran with it and never provided an argument. So I'm going to have to do the job for him, I guess. I'm going to prove to you today that aesthetics is just as important in the quote-unquote real world as it is in the fictional world, which explains why people who look at anime and only take the aesthetic component from the story actually are the smart ones, because they actually understand what matters in our day-to-day existence. But first, to prove that point, I actually also have to go back on a claim that Alec made that blew my mind, and I actually checked the comments. No one seemed to pick up on it, even though it was ballsy as fuck to claim something like this and then never prove it. So at some point, Alex says that humans in particular are much more interested in function than form, and this explains why strengths that are based on function are more popular than strengths that are based on form. And that is a direct quote from him. You can check the video, I'm not making that shit up. I don't know if you agree, but to me, the world that surrounds us proves the exact opposite. In my opinion, humans, females and males alike, because of course in this video, Alec had to claim that, oh, females care about things that only look pretty, which is one, sexist, and two, not true, because males also look like this. Look at the amount of dudes who like pretty cars. You're going to claim that it's because, oh, they like going fast? Bullshit. Why are you going to go fast? Everywhere you're limited to like 100 miles an hour. You never get to use that car to its fullest potential. So why do you like that car? Because it's pretty. Aesthetics and the surface level is appealing to both males and females. And it's also proven by the factors that make us select mates. You select a woman based on how fast she can peel potatoes? My fucking ass. You select her on how she looks. So to say that, oh, females are all superficial and vain, but we, the males, are not like this. We like function. Bogus. Males might be more functional in the sense that they will have a tendency to gravitate towards things that are practical, but at no point does it mean that they don't care about aesthetics or they don't care about appearances. And I know that a lot of people won't admit this to themselves because there are a gazillion people, and lifters in particular, who still claim to be training for function, even though if you look deep down at their motivation, they want a six-pack, they want bigger abs, they want, I don't know, they want bigger shoulders. What is this? That's not function, that's aesthetics. But one thing that I will give Alec is that it is true that society has a distaste for things that focus on form over function. Because, and you guessed it, I was going to talk about Nietzsche. We lived in an age where, because of the Industrial Revolution, you would be blamed by people and by society in general if you embraced hobbies and practices that were not directly productive. Everything I do must be productive. Everything I do must have a tangible material repercussion, or else it's bullshit. So these people will never meditate, or they won't read because what's the point of reading, or they won't read philosophy because philosophy won't help me in life. All things that are absolutely untrue, but that's what they believe. And sadly, it is true that a lot of people are still stuck in that mindset, which is why they will look at something like bodybuilding and say, oh, it has no function, therefore it is bad. Alec thinks exactly like this. The issue is that, just like with philosophy, it's not that there's no function to this thing, it's that you don't understand the function. And again, just because you don't understand or like something doesn't mean that it's magically bad. Yes, there is a function to natural bodybuilding. Yes, there is a function to philosophy. And actually, if you open yourself to them, just like with anime, you would access a word of wisdom that will remain close to you because you remain close as well. But between what society says it likes and what it really likes, there is a gap. So even though we do live in a world where you could still be shamed by people for leisurely activities, we still see that, at least under the reign of modernity, we are in the age of aesthetics. What matters first and foremost is how things look. And you could actually bemoan that fact and say that it was better in the past of function. And I don't actually disagree with you, because just look at the rise of machines. What did machines do? Well, they took away a ton of stress, a ton of physical stress that used to be put on humans. And that's a good thing because now we don't have to actually work as hard. But it's also a bad thing because we became super sedentary and now people get fat, they get sick, and they get weak, and they die early. So that's a bad thing. But at the same time, it also means that the machines are taking care of the heavy labor. Doesn't mean that we have to stop the heavy labor. Now what we can do instead is we can do the labor that we love. Instead of being forced to turn your body into a beast of burden and carry heavy shit, because if you don't, you fucking die, what you can do instead is, no, you can approach it as an art. Now you can build the body, you can sculpt the body. Bodybuilding is the purest form of an aristocratic practice, because it is true that it has no applicability, at least from the naked eye, and it's something that seems to be focused entirely on making something beautiful. On the other hand, something like powerlifting or strength sports are much more, in a sense, plebeian in its nature, because it stems from a time where people had to follow and focus function because it was their only way to actually live. See, that would have been an interesting point to make in a video about aesthetics versus function. You could have made an entire point around the fact that things like strongman or powerlifting or strength in general is much more connected to the ancient roots of Greece or even masculine essence as we know it. But no, instead of that, I'm the one making the point for you. This is why before actually making a video, you have to research the topic. And this, sadly, this lack of research has led Alec to claim the exact opposite of what I just explained, which is the fact that in his head, he seems to be under the impression that bodybuilding isn't popular on social media and that all other sports that are based on function are super popular. So it's actually on bodybuilding to catch up. But bro, there's no catching up to do. Bodybuilding is the most popular sport on this platform. You know why? Because it's not a sport. It's an artistic pursuit. That's why people love it so much. It's because it is not something that requires you to hit certain numbers. Everyone can join bodybuilding. And this is why 90% of all fitness media is really just bodybuilding wearing a mask. All of these articles on how to tone your glutes, bodybuilding. Every single article on how to get bigger biceps, bodybuilding. Just because it's not stamped bodybuilding doesn't mean that it isn't. It's in the name, bodybuilding. If you lift and you do it because you want to build the body, look better, get slimmer, bigger arms, bigger shoulders, guess what? You're a bodybuilder. You can try to weasel your way around that one as much as you want, but you're a bodybuilder. And I understand that some people, and Alec is a very good example of that, seem to confuse pro bodybuilding, which is a fringe sport, absolutely, that is followed by very few people, with natural bodybuilding, which, as I explained, is the most popular sport on the platform by far. And if you don't believe me, just compare the views that videos about strength manage to gather as opposed to videos about fitness and just general aesthetics in the first place. And again, that's not an indictment on your sport. If anything, it's actually the proof that you need to be a special person to like strength, to like the pursuit of function, because the average person simply doesn't. But it's super important to understand that, to understand the actual nature of the demographic that makes up YouTube fitness and fitness in general, because if you don't, you end up making an argument like Alec made, which is that people prefer function over form, which is entirely disconnected from reality, so of course the argument also is. And this is why he also follows up with an example that is un magistral contre son camp, as we say in French. Meaning that he brings up a point that goes directly towards proving that my argument is correct, but he doesn't understand or realize it because the view that he has of function versus aesthetics is skewed in the first place. So this argument and this example is based on CrossFit. Alec, to prove his point that people prefer function over form, brings up CrossFit and says, hey guys, look at CrossFit, look how popular the sport is. This is the proof that people like function more than aesthetics. The issue is that that's not true. Because why did CrossFit become popular in the first place? Anyone who's been watching YouTube fitness knows that there used to be a time when people made fun of CrossFit. They make fun of it now, but back in the days, it was everyone. It was considered a clown sport. What exactly made it so that now it is widely regarded by the mainstream at least as something super cool and worth pursuing? Is it because of how functional it is? Is it because they climb the ropes faster now? No, it's because they look jacked as fuck. That is the sole reason why the sport is popular. 15 years ago, it was skinny dweebs that looked like marathon athletes doing CrossFit and no one gave a fuck. And then they gave PDs to everyone. The women have massive shoulders bigger than mine with six packs and suddenly the sport is super fucking popular. So as I said, it proves the exact opposite of what Alec was supposed to try and prove, which is that yes, aesthetics is the most important thing and people will always gravitate towards bodies that are muscular over function. And sadly, the same also applies to functional channels. I mean, I don't mean to be a dick. I mean, I am a dick, but I don't mean to be. It's in my nature, but look at Alex's channel. I mean, it's a decent size, but keep in mind he's been making videos for 10 years. So what explains the fact that his growth is so slow? Is it because he makes bad videos? Is it because he's a bad person? No, his videos are great. I would say that he's one of the best channels on this platform about function, athleticism, and general strength. He really knows his shit, and yet, look at his audience. Why? Well, it's because of what I just explained. The demographic that cares about strength on this platform is very tiny. So if you make videos about that, you're not going to get many people on your platform. And to that, you could say, well, what about powerlifting? Powerlifting used to be big. Or what about the Pioneer? I'll talk about powerlifting later. Let's start with the Pioneer first. Another guy that I like a lot, great videos. Why did the Pioneer become so popular? Is it because he teaches people how to barrel crawl or he makes you super functional and mobile, bro? Go watch his more popular videos. They all have one thing in common. They're based on the way you look. Every single one. His videos about Bruce Lee, his videos about Baki. Why do people click on these? It's because they look at the character, they look at the actor, and they think, I want to look like this. Let me see what I have to do to get there. So, function is a byproduct of aesthetics. People get in there because they want to look like the guy, and then they get sucked into the function. And I'm not saying that to blame the Pioneer. He does what he has to do, and he does it well. But it's funny to see that the number one poster guy for functional fitness on this platform is a dude that got big by making videos about Batman and about Baki, which are anime characters, and he used what to promote the videos? The way they look. The aesthetic proponent is more important than the functional one. Another example I could use is calisthenics. I put calisthenics here because this one is like, it's a killer argument, so strong in fact that I really don't even want to use it, but I'll say it right now. Do you think that people would do calisthenics if there was no aesthetic response in their body? Do you think that people would love that sport so much if calisthenics didn't make you and turn you into a Greek god with a six-pack with a V-taper? You know the answer and I know the answer. When I'm going to play that game, the answer is no. If there was just the function and not the aesthetics, they wouldn't do it. They do it because they like what it does to their body. And of course, they're forced to actually go through the function to get the results. But when I see calisthenic bros who call themselves athletes and who say, oh, I'm in it for the love of the movement, bro, bullshit. If the movement didn't come with a reward in the form of a better looking body, you would not be doing it. Very few people on earth like this are able to pursue something as strenuous and difficult as strength sports without the carrot. And the good thing is that if you do a strength sport, you're going to get more muscular anyways, so you will get the carrot, but it's insulting to pretend that you don't like carrots when you are literally sucking on one. And by the way, the same goes for every other functional sport that is in the spotlight. If a sport becomes mainstream, it's because the people who practice the sport are big. Look at MMA. MMA fighters, on drugs or not, look massive and jacked, so people are super attracted to the sport. Look at Olympic weightlifting. Anyone who has followed that sport for a long time like I have knows that it was not popular on this platform at all. No one gave a fuck until Chinese weightlifters came onto the scene looking jacked as motherfuckers, and suddenly everyone cared about the sport. Does it mean that the sport in itself sucks? No, I have the utmost respect for Olympic weightlifting. I'm just saying that the average person does not possess the refinement needed to be able to enjoy the sport for what it is, which is function. So instead they consume it through the aesthetic component, and that is what makes them stick around. And if you don't believe me again, I have another historical proof I can pull out of my hat, which is powerlifting. I told you we would discuss powerlifting. You could tell me, well, if people care so much about form and not function, why was powerlifting so big in 2010? Well, I know exactly why. It's because back then, bodybuilding was dying because it was handled by PD users. People were rightfully so distrustful of these types, so they were looking for another way to get aesthetic and to get jacked, and they turned to powerlifting. Hence the boom of powerlifting in 2010. Look at powerlifting now. Look at their channels. Dead. They're not getting any views now. You know why? It's because that wave of people who jumped on the bandwagon 10 years ago realized that it doesn't work, or realized that, hey, maybe if I took advice from a bodybuilder instead, a natural bodybuilder, I would get better results. So now you have people running powerlifting channels who are like, what the fuck? Where did my audience go? Well, you never had an audience in the first place, bud. These people are interested in general fitness. They wanted to look better. They never wanted to have a bigger deadlift. That's what you gave them, and they didn't want that. So eventually they left, and now the audience that you have is the actual audience you should have had in the first place, which is people who care about strength, and there's nothing wrong about that. It is a beautiful pursuit, but it's not for everyone. It's reserved to an elite of individuals who truly in their hearts do not give a fuck about aesthetics. And why do I say an elite? Am I saying that these people are somehow superior? No, but they did something interesting, which is they're going against human nature. Because unlike what Alec says, humans are primarily visual creatures, meaning that the thing that first and foremost hits the high and that we tend to value when it comes to appraising someone else tends to be the way they look. If you tell me I'm wrong, you really right now are trying to argue that when you look at a woman, the first thing that you look at is their soul. Try to peer into their soul. You want to see what their character is made of. Maybe later to see if they're going to be wife material. But the first thing you're going to check first and foremost is their tits, their boobs, if they have nice eyes, if they have nice lips. It's going to be the aesthetic. All of that to say that yes, the base instinct of any human is first and foremost the visual instinct. Because we primarily judge the world around us based on how things look. If we were dogs, I would tell you that the olfactive ability is the primary instinct, because we would use our noses much more, but unless you're like me and you have a massive schnoz, most likely you use your eyes more often than your nose. And this also applies to how we perceive one another. When we look at one another, we don't sniff each other's assholes. We look at each other. So if you meet someone who's jacked, your first thought naturally will never ever be, oh, that guy must be super weak. No one thinks that. People like Alec do, because they're stuck in their echo chamber, but 99.9% of people, when they see someone like me, their first instinct is, oh, this guy must be super, super strong. So what does it mean? It means that in the real world, okay, we move from the world of anime to real world, looking strong is being strong, because people have no ability to appraise your function based on just you being there. Because you're just there, you're just existing. So if you're just existing and you're small, no one cares how much you can lift. You're small. That's what people see, and that's the end of the day. If someone is big, however, like me, even if I'm weak, it doesn't matter. People think I'm strong. So technically, I am strong. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because it shows that Alex, sadly, is wrong on both ends. He's wrong on the anime end when he thinks that aesthetics is just a subpar byproduct and should be ignored, and people who like it first and foremost are idiots. And he's wrong in the real world, because in the real world it's the same thing. Aesthetic should be your number one priority because it's everyone's number one priority. And I'm not saying that you should live your life based on what people think. I'm just saying that if in your heart you are, in a sense, inclined towards aesthetics, then you should embrace it, because actually this is the optimal choice in life. And this is why, by the way, I and many other bodybuilders brag about being weak. That was something that seemed to puzzle Alec, because he has a tough time putting himself in other people's shoes. So I'll explain to you why we brag about it. We don't brag about it because we like being weak. No one likes being weak. We brag about it because we're making fun of you. We're making fun of people like you who seem to believe that the only way to get respect from individuals in day-to-day life is to lift more plates than the next guy. Even though we all know that this makes no sense, because again, there's no number above your head that says how much you bench in real life. The only thing people see is your body. So, as a conclusion, we can actually surmise that what matters in interactions, social interactions, is aesthetics, is the way your body looks. So it's funny as fuck that you would think that your strength is going to be more important and impactful than my body, even though my body trumps you, even though I'm much weaker, the thing that you care about, but that no one else cares about, because it's a pursuit that very few people actually give a fuck about. Which is also why, if you do lift for strength and for function, you better love it. You better really be into it, because if you do like so many functional bros do, which is lift for function and then hope that you're going to get aesthetic as a byproduct, you're going to be very disappointed. Because when you actually chase a pursuit, but you don't actually get into the pursuit, guess what? Most likely, you're not going to be very good at the pursuit. And the only way people would ever do that, in my opinion, is because they have integrated the notion in them that aesthetics is bad and shameful, so they can't access it directly. So instead, they are trying to, in a sense, get a roundabout way to get there so that they can claim, oh, well, I never tried to be aesthetic, but look how aesthetic I am, which deep down proves that they care about aesthetics. So instead of lying to themselves, they should just embrace bodybuilding. It's okay, your parents will still accept you at the dinner table, you can come out of the closet, you like big muscles, I like big muscles too. And maybe that will even prevent you from turning into the type of person who is so resentful of muscular men that they end up trying to make fun of people who favor aesthetics with arguments such as big muscles aren't functional, therefore they're bad, an argument that was used like 5 times in this video, always with like a SpongeBob meme in the background. So you couldn't research male power fantasies and anime for like 5 minutes, but you took the time to edit fucking SpongeBob skits in your video? Really, bro? All of that for an argument that really states, oh, big muscles, like this big muscle right there, or it's just air. Even normies don't say that anymore. Like, if a normie said that to me, I'd be like, oh, I can dismiss this guy because he's fucking stupid. You are supposed to be part of the lifting community. So why do you still propagate that type of insanely outdated ideas? There's no such thing as an unfunctional muscle. It doesn't exist. Muscles are developed via function. If I have a muscle, it can function. It might not be as strong as your muscle, which might be smaller, but to claim that there is no function to it whatsoever is entirely stupid. And not just stupid, it's also purely arbitrary, because who asked? Who made you the arbiter of what is good and what is bad? Why do you get to say that it's good to train for function and bad to train for aesthetics? The only way you can make these claims again is to have solid arguments that back up your claim, but we've seen that your arguments make no sense whatsoever. So it's really your opinion, and your opinion seems to be just based on resentment, which begs the question, do you maybe have a problem with the way you look? Because in the video, you also mentioned several times that your chest is lacking and that anime bros would tell you that you need to train certain muscles, and they would be right, because yeah, your physique is lacking. Your physique is unbalanced. Compare it to someone like Alex Leonidas. You're the same height, you have the same stats pretty much, the same strength. Look at his build compared to yours. He mugs you. He blows you out of the water. I'm not even comparing you to me because it would be unfair. I'm like 7 inches taller than you, so it wouldn't make any sense. But understand that your pursuit of function is directly responsible for the way you look. So if you don't like the way you look, maybe you should stop training for function and actually come to the side of people who watch anime because there are jacked characters in them. And maybe it will even prevent you from making the type of claims such as physical training is first and foremost about function, so focusing on aesthetics is stupid. This is the same argument that I've described previously with the fictional characters, where Alec claimed that the thing that matters the most about a fictional character is the way they act. Or yeah, because it's the function of a character. Yes, of course, it would be stupid to hyper-focus on aesthetics for aesthetics only. But that's not even fucking possible, because to access aesthetics, you have to develop function. The only difference is that we bodybuilders don't obsess over function. We look at what function does for aesthetics. Essentially, his point of saying that if you train, you have to only train for function because training is about function is like if someone told you that making food is first and foremost about satiating hunger to not get hungry and to survive, which is true, and therefore focusing on taste is stupid. You should never focus on taste. Since food is about not dying, the only food you should eat is food that is just bland enough so that you don't die. If you put salt on your food, you're a pussy, according to him, because you focus on the aesthetics of the food. How much sense does that make? None. No sense whatsoever. But interestingly, it also connects what I said previously about humanity moving forward. Yeah, there used to be a time where food was just that, food. You ate and you survived. But thankfully, we are now advanced enough that you get to actually enjoy the taste of what you eat. We now have advanced enough so that we don't have to just use our bodies as functional machines. We can use the body to do whatever we like, and if that includes making it bigger or looking better, then it is our prerogative because our ancestors fought so that we could get to that point. And you could think that it is just puzzling that someone could be so obtuse and make so many poor arguments in a row, but as I said previously, it's not surprising. It's not because Alec is a dumb guy. Alec is not dumb, he makes good content. I recommend if you're into athletics to actually check his channel because he does good stuff. The issue is that when you are blinded by hate, you don't know where you're going. So you're going to hit every single wall. And this is why anyone who is into natural bodybuilding, anyone who has even an inch of knowledge about anime, who has watched his video, will quickly understand that he doesn't understand what he's talking about. Because when you compare natural bodybuilding to fucking Liver King, or people who have implants, what is wrong with you? What do you think bodybuilding is? You think I spend my day in a Speedo, in a thong, and I oil my cheek? Do you think that's my life? Dude, natural bodybuilding is the pursuit of health. It's the pursuit of human perfection. It's the pursuit of something that makes us better as men. Why do you and so many other people who are into function feel the need to shit on that? One, you don't understand it, and even if you don't understand it, can't you see it makes us better? Can't you see we like it? So why? Why all of that? Well, I think that the answer is obvious. It's jealousy. I really do think that it's jealousy. And it's fucking sad because, as I said previously, you don't have to be jealous. Either embrace that you're doing something that no one gives a fuck about, or move to the dark side. Come to us. I'd welcome you with open arms. I'd make you a program, dude. Come into bodybuilding. I'm sure you'd enjoy it. But of course, you would have to incur the anger of your subscriber base, which I don't know if I'm teaching you anything, is mostly made up of people that I just described. People who are not happy with the way they look, who are strength coppers, power coppers, but who are stuck. So what they do instead is they call bodybuilding gay. Is this the type of people you want to make videos for? Now, of course, it is absolutely impossible to access form aesthetics without function. But the good thing is that no one ever argued that. This entire story that he made up in his own mind of a guy who would be happy to be in a wheelchair if they were aesthetic, that guy doesn't exist. And that guy doesn't have to exist because bodybuilding is not pro bodybuilding. If you get bigger as a natural bodybuilder, your health will improve. You're not going to put yourself at risk. You're not going to become an immobile sack of shit, what he called bodybuilders. I think he truly does believe the old meme of the bodybuilder who's so big that they lose all mobility and they can barely bend over. Dude, that's not a thing. It's a myth. It's what normies used to say to dismiss bodybuilding because it made them anxious, it made them feel bad about themselves to see other people better themselves. Someone like you should know better. You're supposed to be into fitness. So why, again, are you perpetuating these dangerous and harmful myths that prevent young men from getting into fitness and self-improvement in the first place? However, it is true that people like me have claimed in the past that we are not functional in the sense that I cannot hang with people who train for strength. I cannot hang with Alec. He runs faster than me, he jumps faster than me. I've never dismissed that, I've always been open, but some people seem to misunderstand it and think, oh, it means that you cannot move. No, I can move. I can walk, I can hike for hours. It's just that, naturally, because I'm heavy, I'm not going to be able to do all of the things that someone who's 160 pounds is going to be able to do. So if you're a basketball player, don't take advice from me. I'm just going to make you slower. But if you want to look better and improve your physicality as a whole without getting super into function, then natural bodybuilding is the way to go for you. And I don't think I'm surprising anyone here when I say that if you put all your points in function, it will be detrimental for form naturally. And vice versa, if you put all of your points in aesthetics, yeah, your function is going to diminish because even though these two values feed into one another when applied properly, the true pure pursuit of one or the other eventually becomes detrimental. Meaning that if you want to get really good at sprinting and really good at bodybuilding, most likely you're going to have to make a choice. Or you can be mediocre at both. Yeah, you can be somewhat fast and somewhat big, but you'll never be really fast and really big because what it takes to get these two values is entirely different. And this is what leads people to make a choice. Some people, the majority, will prioritize aesthetics while still getting some function on the side, which is going to make them, at the end of the day, more functional than the average person. And others will prioritize strength, which will naturally mean that they're going to be less aesthetic than aesthetic bros, but they'll still be much more aesthetic than the average person because the average person is a useless sack of shit. And so at the end of the day, both strength and aesthetics are healthy expressions of masculinity and are both found in Greek mythology and in anime. And so the goal of every fitness influencer should be to actually motivate people to find what they like and stick to it. Alec, I have sent people to your channel. I've had people come to my channel and say, oh, I want to get faster, I want to jump higher. You know what I do? I link your page and I say, hey, go there. That guy can teach you that. So why cannot you return the favor? Why do you have to shit on aesthetics? We're in this together, dude. It's us against the PD users. I don't want to have to fight my bro, but if you make it your life goal to make it so that people are going to turn their back on aesthetics, even though it's what would make them happy, then I'll fight you because you're doing everyone a disservice. That is what my goal has always been on this channel, is to make sure that people don't lie to themselves. If what would make you happy in life is aesthetics, then embrace aesthetics and don't let anyone tell you that it is bad. And the same goes for athleticism. Self-improvement is first and foremost about self-actualization, which requires honesty with yourself. Only when that is done can you actually go down the path that will make you happy. And I'm going to leave you on these wise words and go back to editing my 100K special. This was much longer than anticipated. If you have enjoyed the video, you can support the channel. It's the first link in the description. But for now, I'm going to go back to my walk. I thank you for watching and I'll see you very soon.